Okay, so we are live and we're just going to go ahead and give it a couple minutes to let those of you who are just now getting the notification to go ahead and log in. But while we give it a couple minutes, we have Jeremy and Raquel here. And I know we were just talking about this, but why don't you guys tell us where you're calling in from?
Hey everybody, good morning, good afternoon. Jeremy LaDuque. I'm calling from a little town in California called San Luis Obispo.
Which is beautiful. And Raquel, I know you were literally just talking about this,
Yeah,
but yeah, you're a bit of a jet setter here.
a little bit. Yeah. So, hello, everyone. My name is Raakkel, and I'm from PromoRepublic. I'm calling in from sunny Long Island, New York, rivaling obviously the California sun. But PromoRepublic is actually a Finnish-based company, so we are all over the world.
Just love it.
Yeah.
And it looks like a couple people are logging in here. So if you do have a chance, I'm going to go ahead and post here, share where you are logging in from. Okay, so I just posted that in the chat so you can go ahead and share. We love finding out where in the world people are logging in from because it's a pretty, especially with PromoRepublic, we have a pretty international audience here. And then I'm just gonna kick the conversation off in just another minute here. I'll hand it over to Jeremy and Raquel. Who's gonna take it away and walk through some of these very exciting local SEO, social analytics conversation between the two of them. And looks like we got one from Oklahoma. Welcome. And we got San Antonio, Texas. Okay, so we got, more stateside. Love it. Okay, so it looks like we're just a little bit past 9 a.m., at least where I'm calling in from, which is Orange County, California. So now I'm going to go ahead and let Jeremy and Raquel take it away, and then I'll be back to tell you guys about some other webinars coming up.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Victoria. Hey Raquel, how you doing? I'm so excited we're finally here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a long time coming. I love doing webinars together. They're always really insightful.
Yeah, and we've enjoyed partnering with you guys for a long time now and hanging out at conferences. So I'm excited for this franchise. I love talking about franchise digital marketing.
Yeah.
And I love this topic, and I want to frame this conversation up for everybody because I think it's very relevant and timely. Raquel and I both are out there talking to franchises all the time. And I know from my conversations with a lot of franchises is they're really starting to dig in to how much analytics they have and how much value there is there, but how are they going to get to that value? And that's what we're going to kind of get to here. So it's going to be pretty exciting. Raquel and I were just saying that, we think that less is better. So we'll probably talk for 20, 30 minutes here. And what we're going to walk through is we're going to talk about local search. We're going to dig into these 4 categories, right? Organic SEO, paid advertising, organic social, and your directory listings or your map listings. And so there's obviously lots of other aspects of what local search is, but the bottom line is, we're here to talk about if you have 10 or 100 or 1,000 franchisees, right? You have that parent-child dynamic of how are you helping and how are you structuring your digital marketing so that all of your locations are surfacing locally, right? Organically, paid, social media, directories. How is that happening? So what we're going to do here over the next 25 minutes is we're going to touch on what Raquel and I think these 4 categories are. We're going to talk a little bit about how we're tracking these independently, right? Just kind of in their silos. But then we're going to end with how are these coming together and what are some of the exciting things we're seeing out there as we work with franchises and as we work with our own respective companies and what we're doing. what we're seeing when we're bringing that data together. And that's what's really exciting. How are we pulling that data together? How are we creating aggregated reports and dashboards that produce, a new level of insight, a new level of granularity? And to me, that's really exciting, because I think we all know we're sitting on tons of data. And I know it's a bit cliche, but it's just true. We're just not pulling enough insight out of that data. So thank you for joining me on this journey, Raakkel.
Of course, happy to be here.
So I will date myself here and say that I produced this, this kind of image here decades ago, right? Where when the world was simple, literally you would type in, I need a roofer in Rochester, and you would come up with, an ad and a map listing and organic. But we're just not here anymore, right? Things are so dynamic and so driven by machine learning and automation that it's just not this simple. And so we really do have to actually dig in and just simply set the framework around what are these 4 categories we're talking about here. So we're going to take a few minutes and we're just going to kind of touch on these 4 categories and just kind of highlight some of the things that we see going on. So organic SEO, obviously we're talking about websites there, right? We're talking about, what is your main website? What is your friend dev website? What are your location websites look like, right? And everything around that. That's what we're talking about. Your organic is still the bedrock of your digital presence, right? You need those websites out there. You need to look at, the URL structure that you have. Are all of your franchisee websites at a /location and then name? And how are you making sure that all that's happening, right? And obviously everybody knows Google Analytics, and we've all figured out how to structure our Google Analytics and pull that into other areas so that we can actually see each of our locations, right? But what I like to let everybody know is, that is an artifact of what occurred, right? I mean, you're looking at, the traffic that came to the site and what's happening on this site. But what I like to make sure everybody realizes, there's also website performance that you want to be keyed into, right? And so this is an example of a website performance report, that really keys into what is happening on that site right now, right? And what are some of the things that are going well on that site? What are some of the things that need to be fixed on that site? Because that's obviously going to help you inform you about how to improve the left side of this screen, is making sure you're not just looking at analytics, but you're looking at the performance itself. And not just the performance overall, but there's new technology where you can actually dive into every single location, right? Each location, and determine, how's it doing. So that's just, to me, websites are absolutely key, but also understanding how those websites are made up and really making sure you're not being overwhelmed by that, because you certainly can be, but making sure you have reporting in place. The next thing I wanted to touch on is paid advertising, because it's still there, it's still real. And what's interesting to me is it's gotten so large, right? There's so much going on, every platform out there. It's incredible. I mean, it's not just pay-per-click anymore, right? It's the remarketing. It's a lot of programmatic. And what's interesting though is I tend to see is extremes when it comes to paid advertising. Either you're on the one side where you're not using it hardly at all, or the flip side is it's actually being overused, right? Because it's so immediate, right? And it's so targeted, and it's so affordable that you tend to actually, I know a lot of companies are tending to lean on it quite a bit, right? And I just warn companies when I see that coming in, that they're actually overusing the advertising, because that means they're not actually focusing in on all these other aspects that we're talking about here, the websites, the organic, the SEO, the directories, and all like that. And Raakkel, especially with social, right? Advertising has really ballooned, right? As social platforms have gotten bigger, and as organic posts are seeing less reach, you're actually seeing the ad platforms on these social platforms just really balloon, and that's been interesting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do see that as a result of the platforms themselves prioritizing the paid ads, since that's their revenue generators. So you have seen the trend of organic posts maybe not having that optimal reach, as you just highlighted. And that's why you're seeing more and more franchise organizations putting ad spend behind their posts that they are performing. One of our franchise partners is running all of their ad spend through PromoRepublic, and you're seeing the social KPIs that they're looking for really increase time and time and time again, because they're putting that ad spend behind the post that they're doing. And when we're talking about ad spend, that naturally transitions into the importance of organic social, because you really can't have one without the other. And organic social, I like how you phrased this earlier, that these are pillars and bedrocks of that local SEO ecosystem, because organic is not something that's going away. In fact, about 54%, this is one of my favorite facts, and especially the trend here, 54% of social media users are researching their products on social platforms as opposed to Google, for example. And the biggest trend that this is within is Gen Z. They're doing everything TikTok first, getting actual feedback from their peers, and then researching on the Google and other platforms as well. So because of this, you need to be, as an organization, as a franchise company, where your audience is. So having some type of local presence on social media is going to be fundamental no matter what. And organic social still ties into your local SEO footprint, because you know this as well, where you're having your name, address, and phone number on your Facebook page, Twitter, LinkedIn, like every social page that you have, this information should be here. And as a result, the more that the NAP is there, the more that it is going to affect your local SEO and Google ranking. So that's like the first reason why it's important. And just as you highlighted the franchisor, franchisee methodology within your websites, you also have that same capability within Facebook, for example, via the location ecosystem that they have built in. So this is, again, not only your opportunity to have social posting be really streamlined and methodical, but also to have that name, address, and phone number constantly at the top of every single franchisee page that you are creating. So by posting these meaningful content that your audience wants to see, you're getting more and more eyes on the platform, which ties to putting ad spend behind the content and more eyes there, which ultimately brings it back to where you are in terms of the ranking on Google. So social for us and for all of our franchise partners is still a really key fundamental pillar of their SEO plan that they have.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's amazing how, I mean, all of these, again, with the level of AI and machine learning happening, all of this is becoming the bedrock.
Yep.
The organic websites, the organic social, and of course your directory listings or your maps.
Yeah. I would say that this is crucial. And we were actually just talking about this in the beginning, when we were logging in. I just came back from a vacation, and I'm sure everyone does this too. When you're in anywhere new, you don't know anything about it, you open Google Maps, you open Google, you say restaurant near me, XX near me. So that is exactly what we're doing on a daily basis. And we know a majority, I think the stat is like about 75% of people won't ever scroll past the first page of Google. So if you're not there, you're not showing up in your keywords, and your business information is not up to date, you're genuinely leaving money on the table, which is what we don't want to see. We want all of our franchise partners to be really thriving here. So local search engines like Bing, Google, all of the big guys are really helping consumers with finding these answers that are relevant to them and their location. So you really want to be there and have consistent information time and time and time again. And the overall goal here is to build the ecosystem that enables you to make sure that your websites or your Google profile is up to date. All information is across from this. And we saw the importance of the directory listings and so on when a great example is during the pandemic over the past few years, we knew store hours were changing, things like this were changing, and you want to make sure that all that information is up to date So it gives you the data that you need to run your business effectively. And so the customer can also be finding right and relevant information to them. So you want to always be popping up when someone searches something and to have that visibility there. So again, that social piece is a key there, as well as the directory listings piece.
Yeah, and I mean the intersection of all of these when it comes to the major search engines is interesting, because somebody like a Google or anybody on this list here, they're actually validating your address across everywhere they can find on the internet,
Yep.
right? In
Correct.
social, on the website itself, in other directories. I mean, so believe me, I mean, the ecosystem is so vast, but it literally is all connected, and the more times a Google can validate, your address in various places, that amongst other things helps. I know for me, I'm a franchisee of Sport Clips, and yes, during the pandemic, Google's, what was Google My Business, Google Profile Manager now, was critical. I mean, we were shutting down and changing hours, and so just watching Google themselves, actually spend a lot of more energy on what it looks like to a to a small business owner to be able to go in and make updates, has been interesting to watch. So we'll switch gears a little bit here, and we're going to go through those four big pillars again, but now more from a tracking standpoint, because that's going to help frame up the conversation that we'll have at the end, which is, how do you pool all this information, together? So Raakkel and we're just going to spend a couple minutes going back through organic SEO, the paid, the organic social, the directory listings, and just kind of give just like a highlight, on, how are you tracking this stuff, right? And so I mentioned, when we're talking about organic SEO, we talked about, the analytics, right? But I just wanted to point out that, we've all heard of Google's major algorithm changes over the years, right? And I got to tell you, as we speak to franchises, I'm still talking to folks who are really not taking Core Web Vitals seriously enough. So every chance I get, I bring it up. But Core Web Vitals is an update that Google came out with some time ago now, but it's significant. And it has significant impact on your rankings and you surfacing. And so just make sure that you have software that is actually analyzing your website for what is called Core Web Vitals. These are the three main buckets of it. But the bottom line with this update is Google came out and said that the user experience is absolutely paramount. And that's basically what Google did, was they came in and they said, we're going to track these three things very seriously. This largest contentful pain, the first input delay, and the cumulative layout shift. We're going to track these things. And like always, we're going to ding you if you're not doing well on those. All of those have to do with the experience itself. So if you don't have a well-designed website and you're not actually tracking your Core Web Vitals, that's something you need to look at. And then just the other thing is it's not just about that Google Analytics. It's about the performance of the website too, analyzing the website, analyzing and auditing each page, and then doing that over time. So those are the kind of the key highlights that I see, that I would love to see franchises really focusing on when it comes to the organic. When it comes to the paid, we talked about it. It's very targeted. It's very specific. I love that about paid. It's great. But just don't become over reliant on it. And certainly just go back to the fundamentals. I know this is as fundamental as you can get, but it's just critical that, every campaign has got to be connected to, some kind of code where you're tracking that, which has got to be connected to some kind of landing page or something that allows you to actually track, those dollars. It's very trackable. But when you start tying it to campaigns, which gets you outside of the platform you're advertising in, too often I just see it that everybody starts to lose the trackability of those dollars into that campaign, into ultimately where they're sending somebody. So it's a kind of a reinforcement that you really got to stick to the fundamentals when it comes to the advertising.
Absolutely. And I think sticking to fundamentals is a pretty core concept for both directory listings and organic social overall. Directory listings really help you understand if a profile is complete enough. Just as Jeremy highlighted on your organic website, you want to make sure that your profiles are complete, or if you have room to improve, because as Jeremy highlighted, the local interfaces that Google and the other search websites are providing are changing, and they're optimizing for the hyper local end user experience. So you need, as a franchise organization, you need to make sure that your franchisee profiles are as complete as they can be. And you want to make sure that you're also tracking the results of that. And this is where we'll highlight at the end where PromoRepublic is really growing in. But you can track the views and the clicks that you're getting from the profile, the reviews that you're getting across the different platforms. And this is all, again, really important, because the more the business information is visible, accurate, correct, and filled out appropriately, the more this will push out to your pages. And as Jeremy highlighted earlier, Google's tracking this, and more as this populates more, that influences your algorithm and ranking. So this is really important. And I want to highlight here, not only is consistency key for the directory, but also for organic social. This is going to be a really important part here. Organic social, in the scope of the content that you're posting, we all know the KPIs here. You have your reach, engagement, followers, etc. But this is a really interesting realm to play in still, not only because, as highlighted, this still actually affects your local SEO, but also is a really great experimentation point with your audience. The consistent and localized content is going to be the winner here, where you are tailoring content to each location and each market. Because, for example, Jeremy is in California, I'm on Long Island, New York. So we have two totally different localities. We say some things on Long Island that you don't in California, and vice versa. So you want to make sure all content there is localized, and you want to make sure it's all about relationship building as well, because this is your audience, and this is where it's really cheap, for example, for you as a franchisor or franchisee to test what's working, what's not. You can see that immediate reaction from your audience on anything that you're hypothesizing and testing. So neglecting your organic social presence really means potential customers are missing out on your products and services, and you can build a loyal customer base from here. So organic social is still one of the key pillars, as highlighted, for this whole ecosystem to be successful.
Yeah, no, I actually love that term. I'm going to go back, because as we've been walking through these, what's really interesting is, organic SEO is where it all started, right?
Yeah.
A long time ago. And so I just love even the word organic social, because, it too is really the bedrock. But what occurred to me is, and I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit, is each one of these organic SEO is, we're talking about websites, we're talking about content, paid advertising, fundamentally different skill set, right? To do paid advertising, you're analyzing, the AdWords and stuff like that. Organic social, fundamentally different discipline, right? Because it's so different. Directory listings, making sure that your name, address, and phone number and other information is accurate across so many. They're all so different. Mm-hmm. Like, what do you see in terms of marketing departments at franchises and how they're dealing with, how different discipline is, each one of these is? Do they, I know I work with some franchises where they're just big enough where they literally have experts in each one of these categories. Yeah. They literally have people, or some where, they've picked some, but they outsource the others because they recognize this is just not a skill we have. So what are you seeing out there?
That's a really great question. And PromoRepublic, actually, we had one of our CMO peer talks literally last month about this exactly. So this is perfect to kind of dive into deeper. So I think you hit the nail on the head. It really depends on the size of the organization. someone like a Sport Clips definitely has the capabilities to have a dedicated person or even team to each of the 4 pillars that you have mentioned here. Some smaller organizations that are just starting out, maybe you're in like the 10 location range, maybe you're in the 50 or even 100, because we know that that can vary greatly in size and scope of the team. And this really depends on what your core competency is as that first marketing hire within the team. Let's say I'm very strong in organic social and paid social. That means I need to hire my number 2 who's strong in the 2 other areas that I'm lacking in. So I would say like that's a really great way to start your hiring process around the local marketing team, which is evaluate the skills that you already have on your team and see where the deficits are and grow from there. Which may seem obvious to hiring managers, but when you're diving it into these 4 key pillars, I think it's tough to be really radical and evaluate your own skills, because we're like, yeah, we're unicorns. I can do everything at once. Of course I can do that. We all say that. But I think that's a really great place to start. And it, as you said, it just varies so much between organization and organization.
Yeah. And I think because these have all become so different, I think this actually sets us up nicely. I'm going to skip forward now to the next section. The last section of our talk here is, how do you pull all this together? There's so much data out there, but what we're really after, of course, is we're after insights and what is the intent of the customer? Because that's a common thread, right? You can send through all of these. If you're Raakkel, like you just said, if you're the VP of marketing and your skill set, and you hire a number 2 who has some others, and so your team, ends up being a few people on your team, a few vendors that you're working with, regardless of how you're made up, there's a common thread through all of that, which is understanding the customer, how to get to that customer, what does that customer want, and how do you speak to them? And then obviously, the ROI of these different campaigns that you're doing. So, how do you make sense of it when there's so many different places you can go to get get information? Google alone is crazy how much information there is, right? And then now every platform you're on has their own dashboard. And so I kind of listed, these are obvious over here on the left, but what about, data out of your website CMS and out of your marketing automation software, right? And even out of your CRM, for leads, or your POS for financial data. I feel like that those just start adding layers of complexity if you want to go there. And so what are we seeing, with franchises that we're working with, right? What are we seeing out there? How are they accomplishing this? And to me, this is when I started, this is very relevant and timely to be talking about this, because I talk to franchises all the time who are literally in one of these 3 buckets right here, right? They're either in the native tools themselves, like they're literally logging into various tools that they've become experienced in. I've started to talk, which I think is fascinating, to companies about BI, business intelligence tools, like Tableau or Google Data Studio or Power BI, and I've met several companies who said, you know what, we selected Power BI or Data Studio, and we're just starting to build out reports in there because we want to pull data in from so many different places, and then Raakkel, you mentioned it earlier. What you guys are focused on is just, hey, we actually see the value of bringing more data into our platform because we already have eyeballs in there, and so obviously it makes sense to start pulling more information in.
Definitely. I mean, you hit a few really interesting key points here, and I think this actually kind of goes back to that discussion we had about who's that next hire, how do you hire for the 4 pillars of local SEO. And one of that is like that invisible team member, which is vendor partners. And when you talk to franchisees and franchisors, I really like how they really decide it's not even a vendor, it's not a supplier, it's a vendor partner or partner, because it is working so closely with them. And you'd be surprised maybe how really thorough franchisors are vetting who comes in. On our discussion that we had, you had some franchise organizations that said, if they don't even fit with our brand's culture, we don't bring them in, because these are employees that we view them as like our third, fourth, fifth team member. So it's not always reinventing the wheel, because as you saw with that list of all of the data sources that you have, and that's not even all of them that exist, that's just the more relevant ones to local SEO. It's impossible to sit there in each native dashboard and say, okay, this is great, this is maybe not so great, I have to improve there. Whereas if you have one dashboard that's aggregating this for you, like TruPresence has, like PromoRepublic has, this will make it a lot easier. And this is, as you know, we started in organic social many moons ago, and we've really evolved just from social, because we saw how important this is to have that big picture, since we had all of the data sitting in our platform. So you can track everything from the key KPIs for social, but even more than that with Google Business Profile Analytics, we're tracking local rankings of businesses, so you can understand where you are, where you're comparing to competitors by keywords, etc. And we even have really exciting leaderboards in there. So we're really evolving for that franchisor who wants to track everything, but simplified.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? It's interesting is I've been doing this a long time, and the evolution of this is really interesting to me, because honestly, I mean, there was a time where really the center here would be Excel, the center column. There was nobody thought of pulling a BI tool in. It just wasn't, that was only for enterprise, really big companies. And so Excel was a great option. And even as a franchisee, I receive very valuable, literally Excel spreadsheets, which is where we visualize some of our data every week in my inbox. Like I get a spreadsheet, and I have no problem with that. I love it. It's a great use of the tool. It's a great way to pull the data in, visualize it, and then send it out. And that's a tool. Like I said, as a franchisee, as a in my region, my area coach and I are able to look at that, compare me to other locations around me. I can ask, coming out of the pandemic, it's like, hey, how is another, this location here? It's in a college. Let's go look and see how the other college town locations are doing. That kind of thing. So the ability to compare and contrast, and just literally, you don't need to know a lot about Excel to be able to just manipulate the data. But what I love is, over the last couple of years, I've started to hear more and more franchises say, oh, we just selected Google Data Studio, and we're starting to pour data into that and visualize that data in there, and that's really interesting to hear. So that's been interesting. There's questions about that. What does that mean? So let me just pause and just frame that just a little bit. So a BI tool, Google Data Studio, you could literally just Google it and look it up. It's basically, it's a place where you can just pull data sources in spreadsheets. You can actually, obviously, it has native connectors out to like Google Analytics, Google Data Console and stuff like that. So like very quickly, if you know how to go in and fire up a spreadsheet and pour data into that, you or somebody on your team or Raakkel, like you said, a trusted vendor partner, will fire up a data studio or what's called Power BI, which is Microsoft's version of a BI tool, or Tableau, which is Salesforce's version of a BI tool. And you can, very easily aggregate, your website statistics, pull in some other data sources like leads, perhaps, out of your CRM. We're working with a franchise system on a data studio, and they're pulling financial data in and literally correlating the financial data to the leads, right? And actually showing a full spectrum of, this is the amount of leads they get, this is the amount of form fills they get, and this is the revenue they're doing. And you can literally start to see, patterns in that kind of insight. So all of these are still relevant today. right? But it's all definitely on an evolutionary, path, and I find it interesting that companies are becoming more and more sophisticated to the point where they understand, they need to bring data together. And then Raakkel, you've got, companies like Promo, who are just organically working with their customers and seeing that, like, okay, we're presenting this right here. If I could present this on top of that, that would bring that much more value.
Yeah.
Frankly, my customers asking me to do that because they're having to literally go, back into a native dashboard. And if I could just pull that data in, that would be really, really beneficial to them. And I would be a better partner to them if I did that.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. What I do love too about this is just the conversation of what are some of the values of aggregating that data? What happens when you aggregate that data? And I'm sure you've got stories of like, yeah, look, when we were able to pull, the Google My Business or Profile Manager, listing up itself and the metrics around that, and we were able to see that side by side with some social activity, that gave us greater insight into the overall, how that franchise system is surfacing, locally and things like that. For us, we actually, these are a couple examples of reports that are actually right out of a data studio where we could actually, we have some industry metrics for some of our customers, and we're able to compare some of their scores to industry scores, right? Which allow us to start to benchmark, not only against franchisees, so you can say, how is this, how are all the franchisees in Austin, Texas, you got 30 locations there, doing against the 25 locations in Chicago? And that's not to pit those two regions against each other. It's to say what's happening in these two regions. Why is everybody in Chicago seem to be doing a little bit better, and then discovering what's going on there. So not only can you do that kind of thing, but you can actually, if you're able to somehow access industry data, you can compare your business to your industry and see how you're doing. And then on the right here, this was a case where we were taking some level of scoring we were doing on how these businesses are being surfaced organically local, and plotting that, color coded across the United States so you can visually see. And these are graphs and charts you can build in any BI tool. So that's the kind of thing we're seeing that's really interesting.
And PromoRepublic has essentially the same thing as we highlighted. We have the dashboards all around the Google business profile and the platforms, as you're seeing on the right-hand side here. We're ranking the locations based on their success in the ranking positioning from Google. So this is really at the forefront of both of our platforms and how we're really helping our franchise partners be really successful in the local ecosystem.
Yeah. Well, and like you said before, you've really got to, I'm sure if there's one thing but we've both learned in franchising is you really truly have to be a part of a franchise's culture, to be a true partner, right? And so what's interesting is each one of these three areas, they're all relevant, right? Because if you're going to truly partner with your customer, you have to show up where they are, right? And if they've already adopted your platform and they're asking you to put more into it, great. That's how you can show up for them. If they're saying, no, look, we have to select a BI tool, it's complicated. We're just the way we are. We've got to pull in CRM and POS data, and I just don't see that doing it, that in anything but, Power BI. That's where you'd show up for that customer. So what's interesting is each one of these, is relevant for who, what's happening today in franchising, because I see each one of these being used today by franchises. So we're kind of wrapping up here, and I wanted to kind of put forth some real nuggets of what we've seen, Raakkel and I, when it comes to this dashboard. Regardless of where your dashboard is, it could be Google Analytics as your dashboard that's your go-to. Could be a BI tool, could be Promo's dashboard, right? Whatever it is, what's interesting about pulling all that data together is some of these things that we've seen our customers really benefit from, right? Like creating, an entire journey, right? Removing blind spots, from that customer journey. I've seen that be really helpful, right? Where you finally discover like a couple blind spots where you just didn't have that insight, but you do now. And I've seen that really help inform decisions, which is what this is all about, right? Everything we're talking about here is just is helping, use those limited marketing dollars more effectively. Developing ROI models, now that you have more data at your disposal and how to manipulate that data. Raakkel, you mentioned it. You sounded excited, the leaderboards things. That is fun to present leaderboards for sure. So that's always fun. So what do you have leaderboards on right now?
Yeah, so this is PromoRepublic's newest dashboard that is for franchisors specifically, where any franchisee that's in their Google business profile or connected to the platform, we rank them according to how they fall into their Google ranking. So are they showing up in 1, 2, and 3 if I'm searching for specific keywords, for example? It's all around that local search profile and how successful each franchisee is compared to that benchmark. So we like to say it's inspiring a bit of competitiveness, because obviously we want each franchisee to be number one. You want to have that complete profile. So it's really helpful for franchisors to really understand, okay, who's doing it successfully, which is obviously great and fantastic, but more importantly, who needs a little bit of help and who can I make sure is now maybe they're not showing up where they should be. How can I help them and boost them into make sure they're showing up where they need to be?
Yeah. No, I that actually sets us up for, I just wanted to end on points 6, 7, and 8. And I think you're articulating 6, which is, though that kind of insight basically helps accelerate best practices, right, across the whole system, right? So, because you can, in a leaderboard situation, you can clearly see who's performing, in a top 10, bottom 10 type situation, and that is just going to accelerate, how those top 10 are getting there. So I've seen that. I've seen 6 here be hugely beneficial to franchises, right? And 7, I think, is critical too, right? Because at some point, yes, a lot of the analytics Raakkel and I have been talking about here are probably for the franchisor's eyes. But obviously, I get the question, hey, how can I produce this as a PDF and I want to drop that into my franchisee's inbox, once a week, because I want them to see the impact and the ROI that we're producing for them, right? And so, that kind of thing. And then at the end of the day, it's just all about that, business level actionable analytics. So, so we're a few minutes over, and we promised would not go the full hour. So I want to end it there.
It's funny how that always happens.
Yeah. But this was a lot of fun, and I love this conversation. And Raakkel, that was really awesome to go through all that with you.
Of course, likewise.
So just thank you everybody for joining.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was really great to obviously be longstanding partners with TruPresence and Bridgeline, and to really see that not only the synergies between us, but how this really helped franchisors make better decisions with their franchisees. Yeah,
exactly.
Victoria, you're on mute.
Thank you.
Of course.
I've just been so wrapped in attention here.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for the great conversation here. And I do want to mention, if you want to reach out to either Jeremy or Raakkel about any of the information they covered here, their emails are there on the screen. And then, Jeremy, if you have a second to hop over one extra slide, I do want to mention we have an upcoming webinar that is at the end of the month here, and we're having Ross from Alpha Graphics join us. That's a QR code that goes to the registration page, or if you go to TruPresence.com, we have all of our webinars available on there. And for any of those who joined us today, we will be emailing out a sort of a recap blog along with the recording of our talk today. That will be sent out next week. So definitely keep an eye out for that. But with that, I just wanted to thank you guys again. And we'll be back on here September 28th again with Ross from Alpha Graphics. All right.
Awesome. Thanks, Victoria. Raakkel,
Yeah.
thanks so much. It was good talking to you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It was really great to have this conversation.
Yeah, likewise.
All right.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.